Hi everyone, it's Heidi from Costume Co. back with another live stream. It's Saturday, where I am at 6 p.m. I'm not sure, depending on where you are in the world, what time it is. We're already halfway through the summer. It's like already August. I can't believe it. And I wasn't here last week. I had a family engagement, and it's been a little bit slow actually, just in general, because I think because of the summer, a lot of people are away and on vacation and so on. So I'm not expecting to have a lot of people here today in the live, but if you're watching it on the replay, I hope you find this a valuable show. So what I was going to talk about a little bit first before we get going is what's been going on with the channel. So this week I posted a new video on the costumes of Jon Snow. It was really well received. I was really happy about that. I had a lot of positive feedback, a lot of engagement from people sharing what they think about Jon's costumes. And it was really fun just to spend some time. I made a joke how I got to spend some time with Jon Snow. Because it's been like at this time last year, we would have been watching season 7 of Game of Thrones. And it was a really busy time because I remember last year I was actually doing weekly videos, weekly wrap ups of each episode. So this year it's a little bit different. We don't have Game of Thrones, and it looks like we're not going to be getting it until 2019. They say now that it will be sometime in the first half of the year. So we have a long wait to go. And in the meantime, I'm trying to do videos on the costumes of Game of Thrones just to sort of fill in that gap and, not make it feel like it's so long between seasons. So I have that. And then I will be doing lots more dedicated Game of Thrones episodes in the coming weeks. I'm going to take a little break from Game of Thrones just because I've been doing a lot of them. So I just finished watching the show, The Alienist. And it was actually A.U. Packmule, who's a fellow creator, who suggested that I watch it. And I'm so glad I did. It's on Netflix, if any of you haven't seen it. And so I'm planning on doing a video on that. And at the same time, I actually just finished watching the season 1 of the Frankenstein Chronicles with Sean Bean, who's also from Game of Thrones. And actually, it's funny because both those shows have some Game of Thrones cast in them. And they're both period pieces. So I'm going to do sort of an A-B comparison between the two of them. They're both amazing. And what I'm going to do is a spoiler-free episode, just so if anybody hasn't seen either of those shows, they're going to be able to watch them. So today what I'm going to do is, the other thing I want to mention before I move on is I have 2 cosplayers that I have sort of lined up to come and talk with you guys on the show. They do amazing work. Their stuff is really top. One of the girls, her name is Natasha Bieberfeld. She actually, she goes all over the world. She goes to different conventions, and her stuff is just like, it would parallel any costume that you would see in many of these shows. And the other one is Sheila Eccles-Smesny. I feature both of them actually in my Outlander videos. So I'm hoping to have them both on. I'm waiting to get like a date set with both of them. But like I said, with the summer, everyone's really busy, and they've got things, on the go. They've got, family get-togethers and vacations. So by the fall, we'll probably things will get a little more settled. I just want to say I've got Pretty Dark is here. Hi, Pretty Dark. She says, hey, I'm here for the moment anyway. Good show. I've been happy with how The Alienist has been adapting the books. Yeah, so I haven't read the books, but Michael Kaplan, who's the costume designer on it, he said that he loved the books, and he was really excited to do the costume. So today I'm going to do, in the slideshow, I'm just going to do like a quick little sneak peek on The Alienist, and what hopefully you'll expect to see in that video that I have coming up. The other thing is I'm planning on having back my good friend Patrick Lemieux onto the show. And what we're going to do is they dropped another trailer for the Bohemian Rhapsody video. And I did try to show that to you last time, but I was having some tech issues. I couldn't get any sound. So he's going to come on the show. He is actually a Queen expert. And he's actually interviewed some of the members of the band before in the past. And he's even written a chronology on Queen. So he's going to come on. and we're going to go through the trailer, and he's going to be able to tell me like how authentic it is. So far, he told me that it looks pretty good. He's pretty happy with it. And of course, they have the blessing of the band. The band were producers on the show. So we're going to talk about that. That's one movie I'm really excited to see. And the other thing is also Patrick is doing some costume renderings for me. He's a talented artist as well. So he's going to be doing a series of costume renderings for my book that I'm going to hopefully have coming out either by the end of the year or early 2019. And it's going to be sort of like a guide to the costumes of Game of Thrones. It would be great for, like, you know, anyone's interested in the show, but mostly for cosplayers, anyone who's interested in the details of the costumes and how all that works. So that's what we hopefully will have coming in the next month. And then finally, I am planning on attending in Toronto. We have this thing called Fan Expo. It's sort of like Comic-Con that they have in San Diego. It's just a much smaller show, but we get, you know, we get some celebrities there, and there are a lot of people who dress up in costumes. So I'm planning on attending that at the end of August. I'm getting a press pass, so I'm going to be able to go and interview some people who are dressed up in costume, and I'm really looking forward to that. So we'll be doing that. That's going to be our long weekend at the end of August. That's coming up. So what's going on? Who else is here? Sharon P's here. She says, I'm here too. Sorry, guys, there's not a lot of people here. I know everyone's really busy with the summer, but I didn't, you know, I'm sort of trying to do this schedule and keep to it and do a Saturday live stream and just, you know, talk about costumes, trying to get the momentum up. But I'm hoping, like, hopefully by September, when everyone's back to their normal schedules, people back to school, that we'll have a little bit more involvement in the chat. But I'm so happy for people who are here. And then if anybody is watching this on the playback or the replay, thank you so much for checking out my channel and checking out this video. So what we're going to do today is I've got some pictures I'm going to go through with you. The first thing is so in my last video, I really had wanted to I had a couple of submissions that I'd wanted to get into the video, but I honestly just ran out of time. I have a full-time job, or it's like mostly a full-time job. And it's just been really busy. I had another contract sort of land on me that I'm trying to get done in the next week. So it hasn't really left me a lot of extra time. And then on top of that, my kids are out of school. So those are my excuses. So what I thought today I would do, since I wasn't able to get these pictures into the video, I would show them to you today, but that I probably will still put them in an upcoming video. And I did share them out on Twitter, but you know, I know a lot of you who check out the channel or who sometimes come into the live stream aren't on Twitter. Not everyone's on social media or Twitter, or you might be on Facebook. So if what I'm going to do is I put a link in the description below I made an album, a photo album in Facebook. So you can always go and check that out if you want to look at these pictures. So I've got two artists. One is a cosplayer and one is, she's an artist. She's an aspiring designer, and I featured her before. That's Tatiana. And the other one is, who's the other one? It's Rosato. Rosato is my other person that we're going to feature. So I've got a bunch of pictures here. So how am I doing this? Let me just check this out. Hold on. I go here. And there we go. I think we're there. Okay, guys. Hopefully you can see this. So what we're going to start with is Tatiana Melendez. So Tatiana's been on the show before. She's one of my original viewers. She's been with me since pretty much the beginning. Her and Aaron, who unfortunately can't be here today. He's got an event, or he's got a family gig going on. And but Aaron's my moderator, so he can't be here. But I wanted to show you, I just thought this was really fun because, you know, I just did this Jon Snow video, and we're going into season 8, as I mentioned. It's only going to be like, I think, 6 episodes. So Tatiana had sent this to me a while back. So what she calls this is, she just did the costume rendering. Like, she didn't actually create this. Rosata did do that, and I'm going to get to that shortly. So what this is she calls this her Jon and Daenerys season 8 endgame costumes. So here's Jon. just alone. So this is her description. She says his Targaryen side shows through his black leather doublet, which is stamped with dragon scales, the dragon wings on the crown, and the red spots of embroidery on the lining of the woolen gambeson. And if you guys watch my show, you'll know that a gambeson is sort of like a tunic. Tatiana is so awesome. She's trying to use the proper terminology. She says, while coloring, I realized I used a black pen on the embroidery that when shown bright light and glows red. I thought it's really cool because it sort of symbolizes the secret behind his parentage. The thread could have been gotten in Essos. Okay, before I move on here, I'm just going to warn there is a spoiler here. Okay. However, his stark side shines through the overall style of clothing through iron wolf fur, teal on the golden wings, and stark sigil on the crown, which is reminiscent of Rob's crown. And the light gray linen beneath the embroidery with the black lining, the dark teal of the woolen skirts, and spots in the embroidery in honor of Lyanna, his mother, also because that boy needs some color in his life after 7 seasons of nothing but black, gray, and brown. You're preaching to the choir, girl. I totally agree there. And his customary black pants, boots, and belt, although studded with gold. So that's John's endgame costume, if any of you are just joining now. Hello, Simi and Sand. So this is designed by Tatiana Melendez, who is one of my viewers, and she is an aspiring costume designer. So this is her rendering of Jon Snow's endgame costume. And then, of course, here she has Daenerys. So Daenerys Targaryen, she says, as a conquering queen and a heroine from across the narrow sea, she writes so beautifully, by the way, she wants to set a big example of power for the rest of Westeros and ascend the throne with a bang. She has completely adopted the Targaryen colors, but still has her own style. I wanted her to shine brighter than the sun, especially in the winter climate. Can you guys see this? Oh, sorry, you can't see it. Okay, well, that's what the problem is. Why can't you see this? There you go. Can you see it now? Sorry, guys. So there was the Jon Snow one. Here's Jon Snow. And now here is Daenerys Targaryen. Sorry, guys. Okay, great. Okay, pretty dark. You can see it now. Okay, so sorry. So this is Daenerys Targaryen, and this is drawn by Tatiana. Everyone who is just joining now. Okay. So her crimson linen silk dress is a longer version of the style she adopted during season 7, with the hexagonal opening on the front skirt that's lined in gold filigree, showing her black sunray pleated underskirt. So she's even got the sunray pleated underskirt. She remembered that from my video. That's so funny. Her bodice and sleeves are sewn in Michelle Carragher's dragon scale pattern with red, black, gold, and blue thread. The blue there and in the sheep woolen lining and padding are a homage to both of her husbands, as well as a callback to her blue conqueror dress. The Cobra-style cap sleeve collar is red and black, with the red portion covered in black and blue embroidery with ruby and sapphire beads dotted around the equator, and the 3 heads of the dragon embroidered in blood, red, and gold. Embroidery is also seen on the shoulders beneath the cap sleeves and the end of the sleeves in blue and gold, as well as the black embroidery with ruby and sapphire beads on the gold line hexagon on her stomach. The hanging sleeves were inspired to look like dragon wings. Drogon's wings, to be exact, are made in black linen that's been painted red and gold on the bottom and the top respectively, and overlaid with more dyed black linen, this time stitched in the dragon scale pattern at the bottom, which itself has gold thread sewn through it. It's fastened to the collar with a golden chain with a gold dragon tooth clasp, reminiscent of her chain of intent, since she already got the crown. She doesn't need it. That's so true. Her crown is similar to Jon's, the main difference being it's smaller, the 3 heads of the dragon, the red on the wings, and the ruby tear hanging on her forehead. She also wears red, black, and gold earrings. Beautiful, hey guys? Sorry, if you guys missed this, and because I forgot to put the image up, here's the two of them together. So as I mentioned, this is Jon and Daenerys' Season 8 Endgame costumes as designed by Tatiana Melendez, who's one of my viewers. And she just blows me away by how detailed and specific she is with everything. Like she's got it all worked out. It's so amazing. So next, I did share this also on Twitter. So if any of you aren't on Twitter, you wouldn't have seen it. But I don't remember when it was. It was a couple of videos back. I had sort of said that I was really disappointed that when Dany answers the door, when they're on the boat and Jon comes to Dany's cabin on the boat, she's just sort of wearing her, her normal uniform. So I was like, oh, I wish she had worn something sexy like a peignoir or something. So this is what Tatiana came up with. And so this is what she says here of it. I wanted her to have sexiness and vulnerability without detracting her strength, also trying to work in the duality of hot and cold found in their respective houses without using red. I was getting tired of our using red on Dany, so I opted for another warm color, brown and gold bronze. So I decided on a dressing gown, similar in spirit to the one she wore after getting out of the bath in front of Dario back in season 2 or 3. Yeah, I really love that one. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was sort of like a very, very simple gold. It was a metallic fabric. It had metal woven through it. And she gets out of, she's so bold. She gets out of the tub completely nude. And then Missandei gives her the robe. And then she says, my thought process being that she put it on after washing herself before bed. The dressing gown is mainly made of heavy and dark phthalo blue velvet, lined with wool and more velvet in the inside for extra warmth. It's trimmed in brown and white wool fur, especially wide around the collar and back. The most difficult part of this outfit was the belt clasp, since I wanted something to symbolize her house with using yet another dragon head. So instead I settled for wings, especially after seeing how joined as they are. It looks like a weirdly violent butterfly. They'd be made using similar materials and processes as the Tyrell rose belts Marjorie and Lady Olenna wore. The belt itself is made out of burnt sienna brown leather stamped with a dragon scale motif. So that's pretty nice. So Pretty Dark says, lovely detailed rendering. Thank you, Tatiana. She's not here. I'm hoping she'll watch it on the replay, but I will pass it on to her. Yeah, she's very talented. So next, what I'm going to do, guys, if anyone's just joining now or watching on the replay, I am just sort of doing some of my viewer submissions, and then I'm going to go to doing the Alienist, okay, which is a TV show on Netflix. So Anna Rosado, she'd actually sent me some pictures, just some sneak peeks of a costume that she was working on. It's really amazing. And then finally, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, she finally sent me the results, and she calls it the Targaryen family costume. So it's very similar. I kind of tied it in with Tatiana's because she's kind of going for this similar type thing. So she's got, this is her rendering here that she's done. And then she's actually made the costume. So this is the final result. So this is what she drew. And then this is the final result. Pretty amazing, eh? And so she calls it the Targaryen family. So obviously it's Daenerys and it is Jon Snow. So this is what she has to say. So this is her this is Rosado dressed up as Daenerys, and then it's her partner, her boyfriend, dressed up as Jon. So of her costume, she says, of the Daenerys costume, she says 8,000 beads. I don't know what I was thinking, but I put an estimated 8,000 beads into the tunic of this costume. This is after doing the dragon scale smocking for the strips across the front. It's amazing how much fabric is used when you end up with only the strips you see here. As for the beading, I really wanted a pop of color around her shoulders or neck. I remember the claw necklace she wore often in season 3. So I was trying to imitate a dragon's gash or claw mark across the front. I used a fiery gradient for this and capped off the sleeves with seed, Mayuki, dragon scale, and other Czech glass beads. I also made the embroidery of the fire at the back and used black lock stitch to lead down to the cape in the back. So I just from her language here, I can tell that Rosado has done a lot of research on Michelle Carragher's website, because she's speaking of techniques and gems and so on that Michelle used. I mean, I tried to mention it as well in my video, but it sounds to me like she's gone and actually studied what Michelle's done. Michelle Carragher being the principal embroidery artist on Game of Thrones. And the other thing I was going to mention, like Tatiana, I kind of really love, I mean, as much as it's incredible when people do, you know, screen accurate reproductions of costumes from the show, I just love it when people sort of make it their own and they do their own thing. I always think that's so cool. So, you know, hats off to Rosado for that. So next I have, this is another picture of her. This is a really beautiful picture. And I have, if you guys want to check out her album, and I've got all her links and everything, there's a link that I've put in the description that will take you to my Facebook page that will have the entire album. And then her Instagram and her Facebook and everything will be there, along with Tatiana. So those links are both in the description if anyone wants to check them out. So she says of the cape was a big debate for me as well. I had no way of imitating the witchcraft that is the pleating of Daenerys's cloak in season 7. And I didn't want it to be something too flowy. Daenerys's look as being very structured and put together in the last season. So I thought it was best to use a 3-to-1 version of the dragon scale smocking Michelle Carragher used. I flattened it and voila. Now I'm going to just make a correction about the cape, but I'll get to that just at the end. But it's no big deal. I mean, she did a beautiful job, but just in terms of anybody who's watching this, about the information about how the cape was made. So the fabric was difficult to find, she says, and I went through many swatches before settling on this one. I took care in cutting it because if you notice, I wanted to give the chevron shape mirroring from the middle. It really helped give an hourglass shape to it as well. Yeah, and like these bands that she's done here, they actually really remind me even of Sansa's costume, her wedding gown, if anybody recalls that. And we've got Anne Clavanos here. Hi, she says nice. And Pretty Dark says, wow, that's great. Yeah, she did an amazing job. And this just here is a back portion. I like how she dealt with the cloak. She has this sort of, she did these loops and then the sort of buttons there to sort of hold it. And the detail in the back is really amazing. She says, while I did not make the banner, this is the two of them with the banner, I did make the staff and the dragon, which is currently smoking. It's fireball scented. I modeled the dragon out of Warbler over a fire frame and used a fish tank air filter motor and e-cigarette and some wiring to create the smoke effect. I added LED lights at the top as well, but it's not easy to see it in the daylight. There is also a backdrop on the banner to hide the equipment from sight that I have sewn and attached. Yeah, the back's really great, says Ashley. Hi, Ashley. Here, hopefully you guys can see it. Let me see if I can go back there. There's the back again, if anybody wants to see. So all around the collar, the back of the collar, that's all hand smocked. Like she was saying, as Michelle Carragher did on Dany's costumes. So here is John. Now, she's so funny. She calls him A. John Targaryen, which is hilarious. I love that. That's her name for him. So she says there are roughly 1,000 rivets in the Jon Snow costume to create the look of the Gambeson. The fur is the same IKEA rug as used earlier in the show, except we treated it to look worn and wind-whipped. The cloak is a whopping 36 yards of fabric and lined in a striped blue. I think it looks like stripped blue, but I think she means striped. The crown was also a matter of debate. In the end, we fashioned it after Aegon the Conqueror's crown, which was lost in Dorne, except we added in blue. The center ribby as veins of blue running through it. I posted a picture of this on Instagram and couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that Michelle Clapton liked it. I've got a picture of that in a second. And she says the scabbard. He made his own scabbard. I think she means her boyfriend. Since we were going to be inside of a convention, actual no weapons or or no. Oh, really? That's interesting. For this reason, we used the HBO licensed foam sword replica and created a scabbard to match the crown. As for the shirt and pants, we used a woven, I think she means striped again, pattern similar to a lot of fabric seen in the last 2 seasons of the show. The armor and other parts were all weathered to try to keep it from looking too shiny and new. If you look at the collar, I did a sneaky kickback to Viserys and Rhaegar and imitated their collars. Very cool. Yeah, Pretty Dark says that she does beadwork and she thinks she did a gorgeous job. I totally agree. And Golf Princess is here. Hi. She says gorgeous work on these costumes. Absolutely. So here's one more. Oh, this is his sword. I didn't know that about conventions, that some of them you're not allowed to bring swords. That's really interesting, actually. And then here is her screen grab that she did. This is, so she circled, Michelle Clapton gave her a like for the crown. So she was really, really happy about that. So I'm just going to come back here for a second. So one of the things I was going to tell you guys, I had a question about this. So when I posted my Jon Snow video recently, I had someone ask me, is it true about the IKEA capes that were used on Jon Snow? And my answer is no. Okay, so what the story is that IKEA Michelle Clapton, the costume designer, did use IKEA capes on some of the Night's Watch, but she didn't use them on Jon. She used one on Samwell Tarly. And this is all based on a video that she had done. She did a guest lecture at a university, and so that's where this whole story came from. And then she later posted a picture of Sam wearing his IKEA rug on her Instagram. So the story that Jon Snow wore a rug is actually not true. And, I sort of joked about this today. Like, I don't, if I were a costume designer, that's fine for the background, but I probably wouldn't be using an IKEA rug on a principal actor. So, and I'm pretty sure that it's real fur that's been used on Jon. I don't have that. I don't have that 100%, but at least for the first 4 or 5 seasons, the fur looks pretty authentic. And I'd even suggest that season 7 is authentic. So I hope that puts that. That answers everyone's question about that, if anybody's wondering. Oh, hi, Jamie Hughes is here. Hey, Jamie. And then Josie O says, this makes me regret not taking home ec in high school and learning to sew. It's never too late to learn. It's never too late to learn to sew, everybody. Anybody can learn to sew. It's such a fun thing to learn how to do. And then now the other thing I was going to say, so what happened was a couple of weeks ago, I contacted the pleaters that did the pleating on Game of Thrones, and I asked them if I could talk to them. And so they were really kind. They let me. I called them up. They're in England. They're in London. Actually, they're outside of London. And I spoke to the, he is Matt. I think he's the owner. He certainly is in charge. It's actually a very small company, believe it or not, that does all the pleating for Game of Thrones. So not all the pleating is done there. They do a lot. They did basically all of Dany's pleating though. So what I was going to show you next is this picture here. So why is this not working now? This picture here. So the one on the left, pictured here, is Dany's pleated cape from the show. And then the one on the right is what Cement Pleating sent to me. So I think I posted how they made this fabric on YouTube. I might have posted it to my channel, but what I'll do is I'll add it to the link. So this is called flat chevron pleating. That's how they do it. And it's actually just done with steam with a mold. So on the right is actually how it looked afterwards. And he told me that this is made out of, they use paper silk. So production supplied the silk to them. And then this is just a standard pleat that they do. It's not even like a new pleat. And they've used this on many of her costumes, many of Dany's costumes. So, so the color on the right is pretty accurate because that's sort of in daylight. And he told me they actually had extras that they were selling to cosplayers. So I thought that was really, really cool. So you could get this done. Like if you're a cosplayer, you can actually get this chevron pleat done either at Cement Pleating, but you could even go to your local pleaters and more than likely you could just say, could I have this flat chevron pleating done? And they could do that for you. So I thought I would share that with you guys. I thought that was a fun little detail. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show some of Patrick. He's been working hard on my renderings for my book. So he sent me some new ones in the last week or so. So I thought I'd share them with you. Again, I did tweet some of these out. So this one he did for me is of Jon Snow, which of course I love this. This is his costume from season 7. And I had a bunch of viewers after they watched my video said that this is their favorite costume. So, I mean, he's really come, like he's sort of arrived now as at looking like his dad, like looking like Ned. And the designers, you know, this is intentional. Like costume designer Michelle Clapton said, this is sort of what they were going for, that he's come around to this point now. He's gone through all these sort of terrible looks to arrive at this look. Hey, 30 days. How are you? He said, I had to make supper. Oh, and 30 days says that Pat's a great artist. Yes, he is. So I was really excited when I saw this. But what I really was excited about, if you guys, hopefully you got to see this okay, is this. When I saw this, actually, I was like, oh my God. Because, and why I was so excited to see these, if anybody doesn't know, does anybody in the chat know who this is? I'll give you a second to figure it out. 30 days says, dang. And why I'm asking you if you know who this is because these two costumes were like worn only for like both of them for a short scene. And the green one is like one of my favorites. Yes, it is Golf Princess. It's Cersei. Okay, so the one on the left, these are both from season 1. So the one on the left is actually the outfit she wears when she arrives in Winterfell and she gets out of the, what do you call it? It's like a cart. What do you call that thing that you ride in the medieval period? It's like a chariot or something. So she gets out of that and she's like, oh, my dear, can't the dead wait? And then he's like, no, I'm going to go, and he goes and meets, the family and all that. So, and then she's wearing this outfit as well when, after Joffrey is hurt and, they accuse the direwolf of attacking him and want him put down. And so she's wearing this gorgeous outfit. And then the one on the right is, I think it's after Joffrey becomes king and she's sort of standing like sort of queen regent next to Joffrey at the throne. They call it a wheelhouse in the books. Okay, a carriage. Gosh, you guys. I am so bad for things like this. Yes, I like that word, wheelhouse. That's very cool. Because it kind of like, how does it work? Like, is it on like, is it being pulled behind horses, I think? Or sometimes they're actually, or wagon 30 discs. Even a wagon would have been a better choice of words. It's definitely not a chariot. That's a different period. So the one on the right, I love this so much. And I shared this on Twitter and I said, oh my gosh, I wish someone would make this, a cosplayer would make this. And I think they're like Swarovski crystals, those sort of beads that are hanging there. But it's just, because she normally wears red and for her to be wearing this green, and I can't even think of any time, except for maybe Marjorie, where she has a little bit of green. I can't think of any other character that ever wore this color. So it's just stunning. And then the other ones he'd sent me one of these earlier. So the one on the left, okay, who can tell me who these are? They're both the same character. Yeah, and Samaya San says, I think both of these costumes were designed to hide Lena's baby bump in season 1. Yeah, I'd heard that she had been pregnant. Yes, great job, guys. Little finger. So these are two. I think Patrick did a really great job on these. They're so good. I mean, it's very easily identifiable, isn't it? So, and like I mentioned earlier, he is going to come on the show probably in the next few weeks, and we're going to go through these, and he can tell me a bit more about these. But one of the things that's so fun for me looking at these is that I'm seeing things that I've never noticed before. Like Patrick, this is one thing about an artist's eye. He's got this eye, and he notices things that I never actually noticed. And I'm like, I never noticed that before. So, hey, Dollar Dude, how are you? He says, and hey, everyone, glad to see you live streaming again. Aw, so nice to see you. I haven't seen you ages. And then Golf Princess says the artist really captures the character's essence. Here, I'm just going to come back here for a second. Hey guys, I'm back. Like I'm sort of laughing at this when I'm doing these slideshows. You guys probably feel like you're in like a lecture hall and I'm just, sort of like my video. So what I'm going to do next, Herman Bumsmum is here as well. Hey, Cred, I'm late. Hello, everyone. Oh, that's fine. Hey guys, I'm so glad we're getting a good turnout. I was expecting maybe to have 1 or 2 people, but got a nice little crowd in here. That's so exciting. I know it's Saturday and everyone's got stuff going on. And so anyways, and if you have anything you want to comment on or say, just, feel free to put that in there. I'm reading the comments as I'm going along. So next what I'm going to do, I started off the show just mentioning that creator, AU Packmule had recommended that I watch The Alienist, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get to it, whatever. I'm really terrible at watching new shows. Like once I'm into my shows, that's sort of it. That's what I do. But I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance, and I like the cast. So it's got Luke Evans is in it. He's pretty famous. He's he's a Welsh actor, and Daniel Bruhl is in it. He's German, and then who's the other actress? I have it in my notes, but I'll get to that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I've decided that I'm going to do that video along and do the costumes of the Alienist along with the was it the Chronicles, the Frankenstein Chronicles, starring Sean Bean, who everyone knows is from Game of Thrones, and I adore him. So it's a really good show as well. So they're both really good shows. I'm going to do sort of a comparison of the two, and it's going to be spoiler free. So I'm hoping to have that out in the next week. But in the meantime, I just thought I'd show you a few pictures that I managed to find today. So here we go. I'm going to go to the PowerPoint again, guys. All right. So The Alienist. All right. So, so The Alienist, this is just a screen grab I got. It takes place in 1986 in New York, which was in the midst of the Gilded Age. And the show, it's actually based on a book, and an alienist is actually a detective. Has nothing to do with aliens. So it would be sort of the beginning of the forensic period. And so it's sort of a murder mystery, I guess you could call it. Be like a CSI, like sort of in the Victorian era. And the costumes are done. This is what was really shocking to me, is that the costumes are done by John Kaplan. And if you guys don't know who that is, he did the costumes for Fight Club, for Blade Runner. Like he worked with another costume designer on that. He did Star Wars: The Force Awakens. He did, what was the one he was talking? Oh, he did Flashdance, which I was like, really? I had no idea. I thought that was hilarious. So these are the female protagonist costumes, which her name is Sarah Howard. So that's her. So this is one of his renderings. Isn't this beautiful? I don't know if Michael Kaplan actually drew this himself, but it's just beautiful. So this is a rendering, and sometimes costume designers will do that. They'll do like full head to toe renderings, and other times they will do sort of feature painted, almost like an illustration type thing to give you sort of a feeling of what they're going for here. So, and she's played by Dakota Fanning. Finally came to me. So Michael Kaplan says the character's name is Sarah Howard. He says she's a working woman who's working in a man's world. I wanted Sarah's clothes to be no nonsense. Dakota has such grace and beauty. She made my job quite easy. And then the assistant costume designer, Rudolph Mant, says she was always feminine, but there's a nice, subtle masculinity to her costumes. And then this is one of her sort of evening gowns that she wears. This is a design again. I suspect that this is done in some type of program, because what they do is they take sort of the same shape and then they sort of put the costume on top of it. So what he says, this is sort of Dakota Fanning says this is her costume. She said, women in this period were restricted in what they could do, what they could say, and then it trickles down into what they wore. You just carry yourself differently when you're in a corset. Even just having to have somebody help you get dressed in the morning and help you get undressed after work, that puts you in a kind of different headspace. Uh, oh yeah, sorry, 30-day reviews. This is The Alienist, which is on Netflix right now. It was originally from TNT, and this I'm talking about season 1. I think season 2 is out on TNT. It's not out on Netflix yet though. And it takes place in 1896 New York. So this is just like a smattering, like sort of like almost like a storyboard of her costumes. Just the silhouette you can see is very, very similar, very Victorian. So Dakota Fanning says Sarah's very fond of ties. Wearing typically male clothing says a lot about her. And the reason why she sort of dresses a little bit like this is because she works for the New York Police Department. She's actually apparent in the story. She's the very first woman that's ever worked at the New York Police Department. And you can imagine a woman in 1896. This is sort of just as the suffragette movement is happening. She is a woman in a man's world. But she's got sort of a slightly masculine look to it. And actually, I noticed there's some similarities. If anybody watched my video on Crimson Peak, which is also in New York, and it's around the same time, it's like turn of the century. She also wears ties in sort of a slightly masculine type costume. So next. So this is also Sarah. And I love how he does sort of the front and then sort of the back illustrations. Michael Kaplan says, he's the costume designer, the leg o' mutton sleeves was a trend that was only in fashion for about 8 years. And Dakota Fanning says, these sleeves have become infamous amongst the cast and crew because they are so large. And it was funny because when I first watched the show, I immediately was like, oh, those sleeves, I hate them. I've never, that's one thing about the Victorian era that I've never been crazy about, those big sleeves that you almost have to turn sort of sideways when you walk through the door. But there you go. So luckily, as Michael Kaplan said, they were only in fashion for 8 years. And then they do these really great, sort of images of different styles of hats. And that's one thing on these shows. Everyone always has a hat on, has gloves, there's accessories, footwear, jewelry. It's just enormous. And so on productions like this, you have to have milliners, which are hat makers, specifically just making hats. And then you've got people just doing jewelry called bijou. And then you've got people just doing wigs and just doing footwear, because there's so much and it's enormous. And I noticed with every outfit that Sarah wore, Herman Bumsmith says that 8 years is an eternity. Totally, it can be. Yeah, for sure. It's almost a decade, right? So every outfit Sarah wore, and even the guys as well, they would wear a different type of hat. So it's crazy. So these are just, some simple illustrations that Michael Kaplan's team, I don't know if Michael drew these himself, but these are some images that he did, or their team did. And then I'm going into here is Dr. Laszlo Kreisler. So he is sort of the main character, who's played by Daniel Bruhl, who you might know him. He's from Inglourious Bastards. He's done some other stuff. He's an interesting actor. He's a German actor. So Michael Kaplan says of Dr. Laszlo Kreisler, who is the alienist, he's the psychologist. He says, Kreisler was a young man, but I kind of wanted him to feel a certain kind of maturity and wisdom. And the assistant costume designer, Rudolph Mantz, says, for the Kreisler character, we wanted to keep him very serious and studious. And then actor Daniel Bruhl, who plays Kreisler, said the clothes make you walk and move differently. You have your pocket watch, your cane, all these things help you and understanding the time and understanding your character. Samaya San asked me he said, I'd love you to review the costumes of the show Picnic at Hanging Rock. Yeah, some people have been talking to me about that. What is that show? Yeah. Oh, 30 Days. You like that one in the middle? That is, these outfits I think he all ended up wearing. So the one on the right would be his evening attire. So a man who would go out for dinner would always wear a white tie and tails, or a dinner jacket. And then the ones in the middle, the one in the middle would be like his sort of more his day of. It's like a frock coat. And then the one on the left is sort of just a suit, but they usually would wear a contrasting waistcoat type thing. And I can't wait to do this video because like the fabrics on the actual costumes are just incredible. So then this one here, this is actually John Moore, who is played by actor Luke Evans, who was in The Hobbit. He was in Beauty and the Beast. He played Gaston. He's a Welsh actor. He's very, very handsome. He's supposed to be, you know, sort of a handsome cad in this. So what Luke Evans says of his character is John Moore is a privileged man, and he's had quite a privileged life. He likes to have the entitled experience of, you know, going to the theater, drinking in nice bars. Yeah, and he's a bit of an alcoholic. He likes the ladies. He likes to go to the brothels, but he always dresses perfectly. Like his clothes are amazing. So that's all I have for those photos. I'm going to be hopefully, where am I here? Hi guys. I'm going to be getting more, you know, when I do the video, I've got lots of pictures. I just started on it today, honestly, because I've been, like I said, I was telling everyone earlier when I first started the live stream that my full-time job is just taking up a lot of time for me right now because I just landed another contract. So I've been working on that, and it's been really hard getting videos out. So that's why I haven't been, I try to do weekly videos, but that's why I haven't been getting them out like every week. So anyway, so let me see what we have here going on in the chat. And then if you guys have any questions or comments you want to make, I just have to take a drink of water though. Hold on. Pretty Dark says, I lived through stirrup pants. Yeah. So how long? So if anybody's younger, stirrup pants were a big fashion trend in the 80s. And I love stirrup pants. Like, I mean, not that I would wear them now. I wouldn't be able to get away with it. But I did. And I remember I used to have this job that I had just when I was in college, and we weren't allowed to wear leggings or stirrup pants. This is sort of before they had jeggings and stuff, but I guess leggings. We weren't allowed to wear those. So I think we weren't allowed to wear any pants that didn't have a pocket was sort of the rule. But I used to live in them. I swear to God, I did. And I wear them with long shirts. So we used to wear them with long shirts with a belt in those days. Right, guys? 30 Days says, wish we could keep all our technology, but go back to dressing like they did. I know, it's so great. It, you know, it really is, because one of the things I noticed about watching The Alienist and even watching just period films in general is how much care went into men's costumes, not just women's costumes. Like the fabrics are so gorgeous. And like they say, they got the pocket watches and the gloves and the hats and the cravats and the spats, and everything is just so beautiful and elegant. It really is. Samayed Sam says, I love, oh yeah, so I read that. Hadn't heard of this show, but based on these designs alone, I will definitely be watching. That's so cool, Ashley. Yeah, and then I'm also gonna do the Frankenstein Chronicles, because the costumes in that are amazing too. So that's also on Netflix. They've only done, it's like 6 episodes, season 1, so it's a really quick watch, whereas The Alienist is 10 episodes. And then season 2 of The Alienist, I think it's just 6 episodes. So I'm just going into season 2 of the Frankenstein Chronicles, but they're very similar. They're both sort of like, period criminal investigation kind of crime scene type deal. Oh, so Pretty Dark says it's a mini-series set in Australia in a similar time frame about schoolgirls going missing on a field trip. So yeah, so I don't know what's going on. So The Alienist is about children, and then Frankenstein Chronicles is also about children. So it's interesting. Okay, and I'll have to check that out. So Pretty Dark, is that on Netflix? Because I will definitely check it out. Oh, and Natalie Dormer is in Picnic. Okay. Second to the left. I like that burgundy. Yes, Picnic at Hang Rock is a new show based on a book, and the previous movie is about a group of Edwardian girls and their adventures. The movie had gorgeous costumes. Need to see the show. Oh, excuse me. Mom, I like the costumes. Sorry, Herman Bumsmo says, I like the costumes. I think the Tudors' costumes really showed their personalities, but I think the colors maybe to complement the feeling of the show. Oh, you're talking to, okay. Pretty Dark. Heidi, did you hear that they just approved a new miniseries of Shogun? Oh my God, no way. I'm interested in seeing that, what they do. I love both the book and 80s miniseries. Oh my God, that's amazing. So if anybody doesn't know what Pretty Dark is talking about, I think I mentioned this a while back, that James Clavell, there's this writer, he wrote Shogun. I think what else did he do? James Clavell. He did something else. That was a sort of big thing. So it was this famous book back in the 80s, and then they made a miniseries with Richard Chamberlain. I don't know who the rest of the cast were. So they're going to redo that. That's so amazing. It's funny because my parents would love James Clavell, and they love those types of shows. And then of course I got really, really interested in them myself. So that's going to be very exciting, especially after we had Shogun World in Westworld. Thanks for telling me that. Ashley Luna says it's on Amazon Video. Okay. You know what? So we have Amazon and Prime, but for some reason, because I'm in Canada, I don't get all of the shows. Isn't that terrible? I do. If you do research of Sarah Chrisman, she wrote a book about wearing a corset in Victorian dress. She has a website called The Victorian Life. I would love to dress in the past also. Oh, yeah. So James Clavell wrote Taipan as well. Yeah. Heidi, was it the Thornbirds with Richard Chamberlain? Well, okay. Sorry, guys. The Thornbirds is one of my favorite movies and books of all time. I don't know if anybody else has seen that. So Richard Chamberlain was in the Thornbirds. He played the priest in the Thornbirds, but he was also in Shogun, the original Shogun. And yeah, Thornbirds that was Edith Wharton. Who wrote that? Who wrote it? Who wrote the Thornbirds? Does anybody know in the chat? Well, that's what you get for cheap healthcare. Laugh out loud. Got to suffer some place and not getting same stuff on Netflix. Is it? Laugh out loud. Yeah. Yeah. So 30 days. He's making a joke because in Canada we have free healthcare, but we don't. So yeah. So our Netflix, we don't get the same shows that they do in the States. And Amazon, we only get like a couple of the shows. It's really weird. And then we just signed up. 30 days. I don't know if you've done this, but I just signed up for YouTube has a couple of series right now. And Jack, my husband, just watched Impulse, which he says is amazing. It's science fiction. It's sort of like superhero type sort of science fiction. And like a darker version of science fiction. And they're like half-hour series. It's a half-hour like episodic series. But other than that, he said there was only a couple of things, but it was really not that great. So I don't know if that's, again, just because we're in Canada, we don't get the same shows, but I'm not sure if anybody here in the chat has actually checked out any of the new shows on either. Marvelous Miss Maisel we get on Amazon. We do get that one. So what else? Oh, Colleen McCullough. Yes, she wrote The Thornbirds. Yes, I think that's how you spell it. I think you got it right. Have any of you ever seen someone dressed in old style dress? I once saw a woman dressed in 40s style. I actually, I used to go to this pub in my old community. And there was sort of like, I guess this would have been about 10 years ago, but there used to be a group of people, I would call them rockabilly. I don't know what you guys would call them, but they would dress up sort of in 40s fashion. So it was during that whole swing dancing time period, like swing. We had swing dancing, and then there was rockabilly. We used to call it rockabilly. And it would be a throwback. And then, so you have guys wearing the old-fashioned suits and the girls wearing the cinched waists with the full skirts and the crinolines and the heels and stockings. They wear stockings, and then they do sort of the sort of style hair. I still see that. There's a group of people still in Toronto that do that. A lot of the cosplayers I find are into sort of that type of look. Victoria, who's one of the girls that I've met through the cosplay community, she does that. She's sort of into vintage. I have another friend who, ever since I've known her for like 20 years. I think she dresses up almost completely in vintage, and she does her hair sort of 1940s, World War II kind of style. And she's even gotten to the point now where she'll get her dresses custom made. She found a place on Etsy that will do that. You just send your measurements and she'll have like different silhouettes you can order. And she's also into period undergarments like corsets and bras and things like that. So she'll do that as well. Herman Bumsmum says that Colleen McCullough wrote The Thornbirds in 1977 or thereabout. Yeah, I have an older sister. So my sister is 9 years older than me. She's been in the chat before, actually. And so she'd read a lot of these books like Pat Conroy and Colleen McCullough and so on. And then she would pass them on to me. And then, you know, of course, when they get picked up, I was sort of into like Sidney Sheldon type stuff. In the 80s, I think it was ABC, they made a series of a bunch of his books. And so like Master of the Game. And so I'd read all those books, all those trashy novels. After, what is it? The Other Side of Midnight. So if anybody's around my age, you might know what I'm talking about. Rockabilly has a punk influence, but yes, old-timey is a pillar of it. A lot of swing dancers dress in old style. Yeah, I've never done it myself. Like, I really appreciate it. I've never done it myself. I used to go, but I used to do, especially when I worked in theater, we always used to do theme parties. So every theme party we would we'd have a different costume theme, like we do Dead Icons, or we do a Western theme or Hawaiian theme, or we always had a different theme. So my best friend and I would always, through college especially, we'd always have like some type of dress up superhero theme. That was a big one. So I was always into getting dressed up into costume. I've seen people in Victorian steampunk. Yeah. When I went to Fan Expo last year, there's actually a society of steampunk people. So you'll go and they dress up like steampunk and they get together. And it was really cool. Like it's sort of like a nice mashup of like technology mixed with Victorian period. And I even did a corporate event back in about 6 months ago where the theme was steampunk. So I thought that was kind of cool how it's kind of moved into the contemporary time period as well. I have a friend who's a burlesque dancer, and she dresses pretty old timey almost every day. Yeah. So again, when I was in theater, I worked with a lot of burlesque dancers, and totally agree with that they like to dress old-timey. And a lot of their stripteases, because the striptease itself is sort of old-timey, they would also sorry guys, I've got a bit of a scratch in my throat. They would also sort of dress very, very like 40s, sort of vintage looking. Herman Bumsmim says, I love steampunk. My 14-year-old son is into steampunk. Oh, is he, Josie? Hi, Josie. Got a few new people in the chat here. Jamie Hughes says, apologies, I'm back now. Hello, all the new viewers. Oh, that's so nice. So if anybody doesn't know, I was going to actually mention this. So 30 Day Reviews, who's here, he's my mod today. He has his own YouTube channel called 30 Day Reviews. And what he does is he takes a product and he tries it out for 30 days and then he does a review on it on his channel. So I thought that was such a fantastic idea. And a lot of his products that he tries out are revolving around skincare and mustaches and beards, because he has one of those old-timey, speaking of old-timey, he's got one of those old-timey mustaches and beards, which is now actually not even old-timey anymore. There are actually a lot of young people, young hip people are into mustaches and beards. So that's, you know, a current thing. My husband has a beard right now, actually, that his mother doesn't like, but I like it a lot and I wanted him to keep it. And then so Samayed Sand says, I just read an article about a woman who lives in her 40s style in regards to everything. Every aspect of her life, she changed her whole house. It looks like a museum that she is now selling. That's really cool. Sorry, guys. Angel All Over says, I've been watching Harlots lately, and it's made me fall in love with the sack back dress. I kind of wish that style would be fashionable again. Now, what period is that? What period is Harlots? Because the sack back dress would be like 1700s. Does it go all the way back to then? 30 Days says, hello there, Jamie Hughes. And 30 Day Reviews, most are men's grooming. Yes, men's grooming. Oh, 30 Days says hipsters. Ah. And then in terms of Jamie Hughes, who I have here in the chat, Jamie is another creator, and I've had him on the show a couple of times. He's really funny. He's Welsh as well, like Luke Evans, who I just mentioned is Welsh. Jamie, did you know that Luke Evans is Welsh? And he has a show where he doesn't review products, skincare products, he reviews movies. So and then he also does a daily video, usually about like current events or news that's happening about the entertainment industry. And so I've had him on a couple of times, and we've talked about different movies that are coming out. And he's a big fan of Mamma Mia, right, Jamie? Jamie loves Mamma Mia. And I want to know, Jamie, did you watch the sequel to Mamma Mia? You were teasing me about it. Samayed Sand says, hipster beards everywhere. Pretty dark. My husband needs a good mustache wax. 30 Days says, I'd like to get a Buffalo Bill suit. Oh, really? You know, years ago, I did Annie, Get Your Gun for when I was working in theater. And yeah, it's basically like fringed high. It's like a fringed high jacket. Then it's got pants that are made out of hide that have the fringe down the side as well. And I can't remember what kind of hat he wore. And then you need a holster belt as well. Oh, yeah. So harlots in 1760s or angel all over. Oh, okay. Angel all over says 1750s. Yeah. So that's sort of the height of the sack back gown then, or the sack gown. They actually, I think there's I was reading that there's the British sack, and then there's the French. And so I think the British, they stitch down the sack, whereas the French leave it sort of flowing and hanging from the shoulder. So there's a slight difference on that. What is everyone else saying here? So many great creators. I didn't know he was Welsh. Yeah, you know, I just found out. So so what happened was as I mentioned, I just finished watching Alienist, but it takes place in New York. So when I'm watching the show, I mean, Luke Evans does an amazing American accent. It's supposed to be 1896 New York, but so, and then Daniel Bruhl is German, but he's supposed to be German, like his character is. So I was like, geez, like Luke Evans, is he American? I didn't think he was American. So then I ended up watching an interview with him and Dakota Fanning, and his accent's not that thick. Like obviously he's probably, because of the different roles he's been doing, I don't know, it's very subtle. So even then I couldn't really detect it, but they mentioned it in the interview, Jamie. So that's how I know. And Jamie says he hasn't seen it yet. I'm going to check this week, I promise. Yeah, so it's on Netflix, everybody. The Alienist. I'm not getting a cut or anything, if you're wondering why I'm talking about it. Jamie says, oh, sorry, you mean you're going to watch Mamma Mia this week? Oh, okay, he's waiting for the sing-along version. Okay. They call it the English gown with the stitch back. I study historical costuming for fun. Oh, that's so cool, Sharon. The pleating is awesome. Yeah, so I just, when I did my Outlander video, I just barely touched on it because what happened was I was doing season 1 and they hadn't actually gone to France yet. So I was just like looking a little bit ahead at the sort of the different styles of the sack back, but it's not really until she goes to France that we start getting more into that style. So that's why I don't have a huge amount of knowledge about it. But I do enjoy historical costumes as well, which is one of the reasons why I love this channel. And I had someone actually, it's so funny. So I did, I was saying the other day that I have such lovely viewers. Like seriously, I have a really, really great community here. And I was such, I appreciate it so much. And so I was talking to my niece about it. I was saying, geez, I have such a nice community of people and on Twitter and Facebook and then on the channel who leave me such lovely comments. And, even if I get someone who's just a little bit doesn't like what I'm doing, it's usually still quite nice. Like it's usually like, they're like, they'll give me a little, maybe a slight little insult, but then they'll always say, great video. Like still, they sort of still cheer me on. It's sort of really sweet. But I got it sort of but then I said, except for my video that I did on rain, which is about the costumes of, well, the show is about Mary Queen of Scots, very loosely based on Mary Queen of Scots. So I did this review on it. And at the time I was really sick, like I had a bad cold. And so I flubbed a few things, like I made a few mistakes in the video. And so people still, like I did the video over a year ago and I still get people commenting like, oh, you made a mistake about that. Like I said Medici instead of Medici or something. I can't even remember. Just a few mistakes that this person just like totally like they were like, well, you talk well enough, but you made all these mistakes. But the biggest issue they had with me is that I talk about historical costuming. They didn't like that at all, which I thought was so funny because I'm like, how can you not like historical costumes? It's so fun. But I guess some people just want me to talk about the show. They don't want me to get into any of the historical references. They think, well, if I wanted to learn about history, I would read a history book. And I always think that's so odd because like, don't you want to know where these things come from? Like, I don't know. It's sort of like looking at architecture for architecture's sake without having any understanding of the influences that come into the architecture. So, and then the other thing that they didn't like was that I shared my opinion, which I thought was so funny because I'm like, well, it's my channel. Like, I'm going to share my opinion. It's my channel. So anyway, yeah, he was not happy with me. But I'm just, as I was saying, with the exception of the Rain crowd, I get very lovely, lovely feedback from all of you. And I really appreciate that so much. Pretty Dark says, exactly. How can you not like historical costumes? I think what it is I've had this criticism from a few people. I think what it is that people want me to look at the costumes. Let's say if I'm doing an analysis of the costumes, they just want me to talk about the costumes, maybe. And other people do this more than I do. I'm not as much into, like, say, the symbolic aspects of the costume. Other people do that way better than I do. So they'll talk about, the costumes and the color and how that indicates the character. And I'll do that a little bit, but I tend to like looking at the costume to say, as soon as I see it, go, oh my gosh, this reminds me of something I've seen. Or here's an example of something that was made like, 500 years ago. That's kind of like this. I think that's so cool. Like, so in my recent Game of Thrones video that I did on Ned Stark, I found this armor from, I swear to God, it's like 1,000 years old, which is so cool, that they found in a grave from this very famous battle. But luckily, because of the way it was buried, it was still in very good shape. And what was interesting is they found the coifs, which are these chainmail sort of hoods that men used to wear in battle, and the skulls were still inside of them. So when they did the display, like at the museum, this is in Sweden, they kept the skulls in there. And I thought that was so fascinating. Like, that they found, like, something like this was found in a grave, like over 1,000 years ago, from over 1,000 years ago. And how, like, how people used to actually dress. Like, it's so fascinating to me. And so then in a show like Game of Thrones, you say, oh, well, here's an example of something that somebody's wearing that might have been worn, like, or that would have been worn 1,000 years ago, or here's something similar to that. So that's sort of what I like to talk about, as opposed to more of the philosophical or symbolic aspects of it. So I like to sort of take the costumes and root them in reality. I guess that's sort of what I'm trying to say. But some of my viewers don't want that. They don't like that. So that's unfortunate. And they'll probably move along to a channel that maybe just does a little bit more of a shallow detail about costumes as opposed to me. So that's fine. But yeah, I always think it's so funny when people, why don't you not do that? And they'll say, if I wanted to learn about history, I would read a history book. So I'm like, I always think that's a bit sad. But anyway, that's my rant about that. And Herman Bumsman says, the costumes of Rain are horrid. I agree with your assessments of the McClintock dresses. That's right. Yes, Herman Bumsman and I have talked about the McClintock dresses. Just terrible. Well, and it's sort of funny because one of the things I talk about is, I read this article this week, and you guys can tell me what you think, but it was talking about how contemporary design is just as difficult as historical design. And I think that from a design point of view, yes, it probably is, but from an execution point of view, you can't tell me that it's the same, because what happens on a show like Alienist or Game of Thrones, which isn't historical, but it's sort of based sort of on a historical period, is you can't just go out to a store and find these things. So like a contemporary show like Sex and the City, where they're using, you know, famous designers' costumes or clothing, they can go to a store or they can go to a stylist and they can just say, can you pull a bunch of stuff for me to look at? Or they can go to a rental house, like even for background players, they can go to a rental house where they rent out like contemporary clothing. Whereas a show like, you know, Game of Thrones, you can't do that. You have to make everything from scratch. So like maybe 98% of what you're getting is from scratch. And the same with Outlander, you know, even the footwear. I know she did buy some shoes that were ready made from like American Duchess, but for the most part, everything has to be made. So it's like a lot of work to do a period show, like anything past, you know, anything before, I would say anything before the even the 1980s is kind of hard. Like when they did Stranger Things. I mean, I know they scrambled and were able to find a lot of authentic things, but doing anything, I think, like say before the 1960s is going to be a huge challenge. And I find it hard to believe. I don't really believe that it's the same challenge as designing a historical show. So what else are you guys saying here? Angel over says, I would ask, why are you here then? Well, I have a feeling when they come and watch the video and then leave me the mean comment, they probably bolt. I don't think they stay around much longer. Don't they see the name of the channel? Yeah. Oh, poor Jamie says, I got some hate this week. A guy complained I was too enthusiastic. Well, that's just ridiculous. I don't agree with that at all, Jamie. Jamie, you have a wonderful energy, and I think you really love what you do, and you really are passionate about what you do. And there's always going to be people who are going to come down on you. I've learned this a long time ago. So, I mean, I don't put my face on camera. So, I mean, you put your face on camera. That's really, really a hard thing to do. I don't even do that except in the live streams. I just, you know, do kind of like a slideshow. So, you know, I always say it's easier for people who are on, you know, watching the videos. And I watch a lot of YouTube videos too. I'm not just, you know, what was it? The hair club for men ad. I'm not just a customer, or I'm not just the owner. I'm also a customer kind of thing. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. So I always try to remember when I'm watching a YouTube channel, I watch a lot of big creators too. But if I'm watching a small creator, I try to remember, wow, this person's had to put a lot of work into this. They've had to take some time to do the research and the shooting and the editing, and they've put themselves out there. So I always try to remember that. And I think sometimes people, I'm not saying any of you guys, because you guys are awesome, but sometimes people who come in and leave a comment, they're just probably a little bit jealous of you. That's what I would say. Yes, Jamie says, I know, I'm too fabulous for him. Haha. Yes, you are. Samantha Stan says, Jamie Hughes, how dare you be enthusiastic? What's wrong with you? Yeah, Golf Princess says the same thing. They're probably just jealous. That's what I would say. Oh, thanks, 30 Days. He says, I like the history lessons part of why I watch your videos. That's really nice. Well, and I had someone say to me, it was like watching a university lecture, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like the last thing I wanted it to be like. Because, you know, when I was in school, and this is years before we had YouTube, but like, God, I had some courses where, and it'd always be in a dark room, and, you know, it would be long. Like we get a small break, but it'd be so long, and I'd just be falling asleep. I would. It would be so boring. And that's the last thing I wanted it to be like. So hopefully it's not like that. Sharon says, I love your channel. You have your own insight. Oh, thanks, Sharon. Well, this is just it. I mean, some of it, like, you know, I try to, some of it is, I'd like to think it's professional from a professional aspect from working in theater and costumes, but some of it is my opinion. It's going to be my opinion. And that's why I say this is just my opinion. You know, you guys, if you guys like it, that's cool. You know, there's things to say about Game of Thrones. I've had people who say, I love Cersei's season 7 wig. I think there's nothing wrong with it. Well, actually, and I don't think I've ever had anybody say that. I think wig has been universally panned. There might be somebody who likes it, but no, there's things I say, like Tatiana, she's one of my viewers, and I just showed you some of her drawings. She's been with me since the beginning. Her and I have very differing opinions on things. Like I'll say, you know, I hate something, and then she'll be like, I love that. I think, and then she'll express to me why she thinks it's good. And I'll be, that's cool. I like that. That's an interesting way of looking at it. So for instance, one thing that happened this week is after I posted the Jon Snow video, I think it was Thursday, I asked people what, you know, I put something up on Twitter about it, and someone said that their favorite, they wished that Jon had worn his cloak when he went to meet Dany in Dragonstone. And I said, oh, but didn't you like the idea of him not wearing it so that he appeared more vulnerable to Dany? And that wasn't something like I had come up with. That was just the producers and the costume designer thought that by him not wearing the cloak, he would appear less intimidating to Dany and more vulnerable to Dany. And of course, he was. Like, she probably kind of, as soon as she saw him, she probably was like, oh my God, I love this guy. Because he's so adorable. But when he went to meet with Cersei, he wanted to appear more domineering. And so he decided to wear the cloak. And so that was strategic. So, but then when she heard that, she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, that's not from me, but I thought that did make sense too. So sometimes there are reasons why things are done as opposed to other reasons. And I guess in the times where I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense to me, that's sort of the time when I'm not sure. But things can happen in production that we don't necessarily know about. Like, it could be a time constraint, or it could be a budgeting issue, or it can be like, you know, I was writing about how Michelle Clapton was trying to get the characters who were north of the wall to be able to wear hats, because she said it's ridiculous that they're not wearing hats, but the producers would not let her wear them because it hid their faces, at least the principal actors. So, you know, she might be able to get away with having them on the background actors or some of the less more important characters. But someone like Jon Snow, there was like no way he could wear a hat because it was going to cast shadows. It was going to hide his face. And so she said she fought it, but there was nothing she could do about it. So Dave and Dan would be like, nope. So there are sometimes reasons behind that. So that's where I sort of stood on her side with that, because, you know, that wasn't her fault. She couldn't do anything about it, even though it was ridiculous. Aw, thanks, Golf Princess. She says, we appreciate all your hard work and passion. And Samaya Sam says, Jamie Hughes, how dare you be enthusiastic? I think I read that already. Jamie says, I know, right? I'm going to have to turn emo from now on. And 30 Days says, I feel like I'm not as enthusiastic as I'd like to be, but hard for me to do when trying to do notes and make sure everything is said. Well, I think this is it too. And I think like just, you know, being yourself is important. You know, if you're naturally an enthusiastic person, I think that being enthusiastic is awesome. But if you're kind of like more of an introvert or more of a quiet individual, I don't think there's anything wrong with just being yourself. And Anne says, hats, that drove me crazy. Yeah. So Michelle Clapton says that choice was sort of taken out of her hands. She didn't have any choice in that. So, I mean, I was, you know, especially in season 7 when they had everyone go north of the wall and none of them were wearing hats. And I was like, what is going on? So she had no choice in that, unfortunately. Yeah, Samaya San said the same thing. My ears hurt watching north of the wall scenes. Yeah, absolutely. At least Ygritte had one. She had a hood. Oh, Titanic is here. She says, I love watching your videos about women's costumes. Recently, I've gotten really obsessed with women's fashion from the past. Yeah, we were just talking about that. So it's like looking at what women or men used to wear for me is a really fun thing to look at. I've sort of just more recently gotten into weapons and being interested in but armor and what people would wear in battle situations. And I always think it's really, really fascinating. And I'm actually watching some other creators. Like I just started watching Shadiversity, and he talks a lot about armor. And I'm also watching Scholar Gladiatoria as well, who I mentioned in my video recently, talking about wearing, about leather as armor. So that's, some pretty cool stuff. So anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap things up because it's just me today, and I'm hoping to have a guest on. I don't know if I'm going to have one next week or the week after, but make it a little bit of a longer video. But it's a long weekend here. I hope everyone's having having nice weather and enjoying their summer. And so I will be back next week. As I mentioned, I am working on a video on the Alienist / Frankenstein Chronicles. And I also mentioned that I will be having hopefully two cosplayers coming on, Sheila and Natasha. And then I'm hopefully going to have Patrick Lemieux back on to talk about Bohemian Rhapsody. The movie's not coming out till November, but we're going to talk about the trailer. And as well, maybe he'll have more pictures to show me for the book that I have coming out, hopefully by either the end of the year or beginning of next year. But just because I've been so busy, I'm trying to, on the side, besides the channel, I'm also working on the book. So, but I've been trying to secure some rights to some images, and then also just getting more information about the book, more research on the book, because even though I've done a bunch of the videos, I still need additional information. So that's what I've been working on. So I hope everyone, thank you so much, 30 Days, for modding today. And everyone who came in, thank you so much, everybody. I thought it was going to be kind of really not a lot of people here, like maybe 1 or 2 people. So it was a really pleasant surprise to have all of you here. So thanks again. And I'll be back next week at 6 o'clock. 30 Days. I don't know if you're planning on having a live stream tonight. He was mentioning he might want to have one. He says, will be giving me just enough time for me to get ready for my stream. So if anybody wants to go check out 30 Day Reviews, he's going to have a live stream in a little bit. Okay. And Pretty Dark and Golf Princess, Amaya Sand. Thanks, everybody, for coming, Anne. Thanks, everyone. Okay, have a great night. Bye. Bye, y'all.